Today, I wanted to talk about the reality of rooftop tents. What can be a pain in the neck about them, what can be great about them, and maybe help you decide if they're right for you. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, I want to talk about the reality of rooftop tents in this video, and we're going to start off with the bad stuff. Now, one of my biggest frustrations has been weight and how it impacts my vehicle, specifically for me, off-road, but on-road as well. These rooftop tents can maybe weigh around 100 pounds on the high end of things, 200, 250 pounds. Currently, my CVT Mount Shasta, which is a little bit of a smaller tent, but I got the hybrid model, and it's got a hard roof instead of being a soft roof. That thing weighs around 200 pounds. Now, the way I've accounted for that extra weight on my Tacoma was by swapping out the leaf pack. I have an Icon Vehicle Dynamics RXT leaf pack, which has about a 600 pound load capacity increase for the vehicle. Now, currently, the tent is mounted to some Overland bed bars made by CBI Off-Road Fabrication. That's what I'm currently using. And as you can see, the tent's got a little bit lower profile. When it had the camper shell, it sat up much higher, and the center of gravity was much higher, which means in some off-camper situations, the truck really did tend to get a little tipsy, and so obviously that is something to take in consideration as well. Now, for smaller truck owners like Tacomas, Rangers, Colorados, stuff like that, in my opinion, you feel a little bit limited to some of these smaller rooftop tent sizes. I used to have an iCamper SkyCamp 2.0, which is a full size. Now, that was when I had a camper shell and a roof rack, so not only was it super high up there, but it also extended a little bit past to where the end of the Pelican cases now sit. In my opinion, the weight distribution just was never right, given that it was so long and it extended out to the front so much. And so I was just never happy, never super comfortable with the way it sat on the Tacoma. I know tons of people do it, and I know tons of people are fine with it, but in my opinion, it just wasn't right, and I just didn't like it. So that's one of the reasons why I downgraded to a smaller size. Now, on the subject of mounting, there are tons of vendors of roof racks, tons of vendors of rooftop tents, tons of different vehicles, and very often, they don't just all work well together. Very, very often in my experience of building out this truck, you've got to account for adjustments that you're going to need to make. And in some situations, it was going to Home Depot to get a different bolt or washer to make different mounting brackets, work with different tents, work with different roof racks, stuff like that. So just in my experience, be prepared for a little bit of a headache when mounting your rooftop tent. Now, how I've got my tent mounted to my vehicle right now, it's now fairly easy to remove the tent and put it back on if I needed to, if I had a place to put it, and if I had another person to help me. However, a lot of people need to take that in consideration because you're very likely not always going to have that second person to help you get the tent on your vehicle. But if you've got it mounted to like a roof rack where maybe the nuts and the bolts are difficult to get to or reach, it's going to be kind of a pain in the neck to take on and put off your vehicle. For a lot of people, mounting a rooftop tent to a vehicle tends to be a pretty permanent thing. Now, if your rooftop tent is permanently mounted to your vehicle like mine is, when I had it way up on the camper shell, or maybe if you've got it out on an SUV or something like that, you've got to be careful when you're going through various drive-thrus. Maybe a Starbucks drive-thru's got a height limit. You need to pay attention to the height of the top of your rooftop tent. And not even just the rooftop tent, anything that's on the top of your rooftop tent, like maybe where the ladder mounts to. There's been a couple things that I've driven through, given it the eye test, and thought, yeah, I can make it, and then clunk, I hit it. And so that's something that you need to take into consideration. Most likely, you're kissing parking structures goodbye forever. Now, I know there's a lot of people in their garages, they have like pulley systems to take the tent on and off of the vehicle. Now, something to take into consideration If you do that and you've made suspension adjustments to your vehicle to accommodate that extra weight of the rooftop tent, when you remove the rooftop tent, your vehicle is going to still be set up for that extra weight, and it's not going to perform the same. For example, when I had my rooftop tent off of my truck for a couple months in between changing setups, my truck was like a bucking bronco, man. It was way too stiff in the rear. Every single bump I hit, I felt. And so just another thing to take into consideration. Now, another thing to take into consideration, and I'd say it was a pretty big con of rooftop tents, is camping in high winds. Now, if you're in a situation that gets really windy, ground tents are easier to pick up, maybe hide behind a vehicle or something like that to get a little bit of wind protection. When you're up in a rooftop tent, you're very exposed. The wind is blowing underneath the rooftop tent. It is a crazy situation, and just to be honest, if you're going to be camping in high wind situations, probably just be counting on not being able to sleep at all if the winds pick up too much. Now, another thing you need to take into consideration is sometimes, depending on where you're setting up camp for the night, it may be difficult to level your vehicle. And in order to really have a comfortable sleep up in your rooftop tent, you're going to want that vehicle to be level. Now, if you've got a ground tent, you can find camp, walk around camp, find the most level spot and throw your tent down. In this situation, you've got to be able to park your vehicle in the most level spot and then maybe use whatever's available, like rocks or logs, to place underneath your tire to level the vehicle. Sometimes that process can be a pain in the butt. Now, I know I spent a lot of time complaining about a lot of the things that irk me about rooftop tents. Let's get into some of the things that I like. The number one thing that I love about the rooftop tent is my ability to store things inside it. Now, it takes me about 5 minutes to set up the rooftop tent, which is not bad at all. But when I have it set up, I have everything set up. I've got all of our sleeping bags in there right now. I've got pillows and a mattress all up top in the rooftop tent right now. Not only does that make setting up the tent easy, but it also alleviates a lot of the stuff that I would need to pack for a camping trip, because a lot of it's already up there and a lot of it's already ready to go. Now, for me, that's one of the biggest things, just because the easier it is for me to just get ready and go on a camping trip, the more likely I am to go more often. Life is busy and we can get caught up in work and all that kind of stuff, but if all of a sudden an opportunity presents itself to go camping over the weekend and I'm already ready to go, I'm much more likely to take up that opportunity and go out on a camping trip over the weekend. Another great argument for rooftop tents is comfortability. It really is nice being elevated off the ground, away from the critters, and sleeping on a nice memory foam mattress. Now, something to take into consideration, not all rooftop tents are the same, and not all of them come with comfortable mattresses. The first tent that I had, the iCamper SkyCamp 2.0, didn't come with a great mattress. Now, you can add in like one of those X-Bed Mega Mat Duos or something like that, but for me, I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose. I could just do that on a ground tent. If I'm gonna buy a rooftop tent, I want it to have a nice, comfortable mattress. Now, I feel like I've definitely gotten that in this CVT tent. The CVT Mount Shasta has a great memory foam mattress, and that's one of the reasons why I usually will push people towards the traditional style rooftop tents, because in my opinion, they've got the best sleeping arrangement. Now, there's a lot of ground tents that don't take too long to set up. My old Kelty that I had, it was super lightweight, set up in about maybe 5 minutes, and it was just your standard 2-pole 4-person tent. There's some of the newer ones like the Gazelle tent. These things are great tents. They set up super quick, in under a minute in a lot of cases. But something that usually when people are talking about the difference between the two, they don't mention is you may set up the tent in a minute or 5 minutes, but then you need to do things like stake it down, blow up air mattresses, lay out sleeping bags. I don't have to do any of that in my rooftop tent, and so I save a lot of time and energy and obviously focus, where I want to be able to pay attention to my kids and make sure they're not getting lost or in trouble, or I just want to be able to have a really simple camp setup, and this really allows me to do that. Another great aspect of rooftop tents is your ability to personalize them and add some accessories that are just always in there when you need them. One of my favorite is the LED light strip that runs across the top of my tent. It's super bright, illuminates everything. I don't need to mess around with headlamps or trying to mount up lights in any weird way. The LED light strip gives a lot of light, illuminates everything. It's awesome. Now, I did need to purchase something to power that LED strip, so I actually purchased this power bank. Now, this power bank's awesome. It's got 2 USB connectors and a USB-C connector, and so I can power the light strip, I can power and charge my cell phone, I can charge my Apple Watch. All that works really well. Another thing that I've added to my rooftop tent, you guys probably saw this in the last video, but this is an iPad holder. Now, this is good for those cold nights with the kids where maybe there's nothing else left to do outside. Maybe it's raining, you want to get up in the tent and watch a movie. This thing actually clamps onto the frame pulls inside the tent, and it holds the iPad. And so we're able to have a movie night. I thought this thing was really cool. The kids absolutely loved this thing this last trip. Now, when it comes down to it, I don't think I could tell you whether or not you should or shouldn't buy a rooftop tent for yourself. But I did want to share some of my annoyances with owning a rooftop tent, as well as some of the reasons I think they're great. For the time being, I'm going to be keeping the rooftop tent because it works out well for the kids. Maybe as they get a little bit older down the road, for the practicality of not having a rooftop tent on my truck all the time, maybe we'll go back to a ground tent, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. That's it for today. I hope you guys liked the video. Coming up soon, I will have a review video on my specific rooftop tent if you want to see a little bit more in depth of how I feel about the CVT Mount Shasta. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you guys out there. We'll catch you in the next video.